The Yankees catching production has definitely turned it around. They now rank 11th in Major League Baseball offensively. I think we looked that up for WRC Plus. Jose Trevino, the 2 bombs on Sunday, 293 batting average now, 125 OPS plus. But I feel like this is all trending in the right direction. And Austin Wells, who production numbers wise still has not, they're not there yet. Still, he still is hitting 200, but he's got a 325 on base percentage. We saw that stat where he's one of few players in baseball to have more walks than strikeouts. The at bats are still quality. I know there was a lot of numbers, Statcast numbers earlier in the season we talked about where he's hitting into bad luck, where his expected numbers are all pretty good. Still, the production has not been there, but I expect that to trend in the right direction, even if Trevino trends more back towards the middle of the pack for offense. I still think the Yankees overall catching is in a good spot, trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and we looked at the numbers just before we started recording too. In the last 28 days, 14 games for him, numbers are in a much better spot. Like he's hitting for more power. He's still getting on base. Like that's what he was doing, and the on base percentage is even higher. So I think we were spot on with like the early season struggles. There was a lot of bad luck in there in the sense that like he was doing the right things, hitting the ball hard in some opportunities, and it just wasn't falling for him. And the at bats felt like he was not in a terrible spot, and I think we're starting to see him come around. Double, obviously, the other night was a good sign, and he's looking very hitterish, as our buddy Frank would say, very hitterish up at the plate. And I think he's finding it because he struggled when he came up last year too offensively, and that was not something that
he found it. He found it after a little while because I think we remember his numbers in like his last 11 or something games of the season last year were very good.
Well, it's funny because him and Volpe, similar profiles in the sense that like everybody expected the offense to be there with the defense lagging a bit. And it's been kind of the opposite. Like the book on his defense, Wells, has been much more positive, and we're just kind of waiting for the bat to follow up on what that prospect profile is. And again, like I'm not worried about it. The guy looks like a hitter. He does. And I expect him to be a good hitter in this league. So the catching situation is in a good spot right now.
Logan, that was the Fangraphs catcher defensive number that you pulled that said the Yankees are number 1 in baseball. What can you drop the definition again? Once again, I know we've talked about this and I'm just forgetting. There's like a combination because it's an all-encompassing defensive metric. Because Austin Wells, I agree. I think he probably ranks up there in framing, and I think he's done a lot to work with pitchers and stuff like that. His arm strength, I think, is still poor. He made a bad throw recently. I forget if it was on Friday against Tampa or I think it was one of the Astros games where he just airmailed the throw. Like had no chance at the guy and airmailed the throw.
I mean, are catchers really getting judged on their arm strength anymore with the new rules and how the runner on first base can take insane leads?
No, but it's noticeable when
it's
you've
definitely
got a
lower
when you've got a lollipop throw.
Yeah, I understand, but it's a lower value at this point for the catcher position.
I feel like 15 years ago, arm strength was the number one thing for catchers.
It's the reason Gary Sanchez was on this team for a while. Why he was behind the plate for a while.
Why was like Pudge Rodriguez revered as a catcher? Because he had a freaking cannon for an arm.
Yeah, and he could hit.
But he could hit. But like everyone was like, "Oh my god, his arm strength is so good." Jose Molina. This is just the Jose Molina podcast. I could watch a highlight reel of Jose Molina throwing behind the hitter to first base all day. Give me a 25-minute highlight reel of that.
He would control the base paths by throwing down after. And you see Trevino do that a good amount.
No one was as good as Jose Molina.
I'm not saying he's a Molina brother. Don't. I mean, he maybe, he could.
Jose was the worst. No, Benji was the second best. Yadier's the Hall of Famer. Benji was the starter. Jose was the backup.
Benji at the end. Yeah. Anyway, the Trevino throwdown, he definitely works the base path more than Wells does. And he sees that. And I think that if we're looking at like trends and how the catcher position is going to be moving forward, I think the ability to have that quick release, snap it down the first baseline is going to become even more important, because as these runners are figuring out the leads and the bigger bases and the fact that the guys can't throw over as much, like stolen bases are just going to continue to trend up, and catchers are going to have to figure out different ways to control the base paths.
Pitchers are now a much bigger factor in controlling that. So the defensive runs above average fan graph measures a player's defensive value relative to the league average. Fielding statistics like ultimate zone rating, which is UZR, and defensive run save, DRS, communicate the player's value relative to league average at the position, but DEF, the defensive stat that we're talking about, adds in the positional adjustment so that you are able to compare defensive value across positions with different baselines. So this is an extra nerdy defensive metric, but it still doesn't say like what are the things combines league average, zero batting runs. It still doesn't say like what specifically for catcher. I guess it's all of the above, right? It's framing, it's blocking, it's throwing.
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
You got to do everything well.
Got to do it all well. All right. Let's well, actually one last question on catcher. Who will have better offensive numbers at the end of the year? Will it be Trevino or Ben Rortvedt?
Trevino.
And then if
it's
it's
my guy,
Wells or Rortvedt,
it's going to be Wells will have the better offensive numbers of all of them, and the Yankees will. At the end, this is newsflash. Looking into the future, the Yankees have made a great decision in choosing the two catchers on their major league roster over Ben Rortvedt, who had a terrific month and a half with Tampa Bay and disappeared off the face of the planet in June and July, and no longer and is DFA'd or traded. He's like a player to be considered later.
we got a couple more things